The fastest way to discover who someone really is to take away every reason they have to impress you. Olivia Harper stared at the revolving glass doors of Walker Solutions and wondered if accepting a temporary assistant position had been a mistake. The downtown Chicago office tower stretched high above the city streets, its mirrored windows reflecting the pale morning sunlight. Employees hurried through the lobby carrying coffee cups, laptop bags, and expressions that suggested they already had too much to do. Olivia tightened her grip on the folder containing her employment paperwork and took a slow breath. She needed this job, more than she wanted to admit. 3 months earlier, she had emptied most of her savings helping cover her father's medical treatments. Since then, every bill felt like another wave threatening to pull her under. Rent, utilities, insurance, prescription costs. Some nights, she lay awake calculating numbers over and over, searching for solutions that never quite appeared. This temporary position was supposed to help. It was only a contract assignment, but it paid better than anything else she had found. As she stepped into the elevator, she silently repeated the promise she had made herself. Show up early. Work hard. Do not complain. Keep the job. The elevator doors opened onto the 23rd floor. A receptionist greeted her with a friendly smile and directed her toward human resources. Within an hour, Olivia had completed orientation, signed paperwork, received her security badge, and learned the basics of her responsibilities. Then came the surprise. You will be supporting our operations manager directly, the human resources coordinator explained. He requested temporary assistance for several projects. Olivia nodded. Sounds good. His name is Ethan Walker. The coordinator smiled. Do not worry. He is one of the easiest people in the company to work with. 15 minutes later, Olivia walked toward a glass-walled office carrying a notebook and a growing sense of nervous energy. She knocked lightly on the partially open door. Come in, a voice answered. Olivia stepped inside. The office immediately confused her. It was smaller than she expected. No expensive decorations. No elaborate furniture. Just a desk, a bookshelf, a few framed photographs, and several stacks of paperwork. Behind the desk sat a man in his late 30s wearing a simple blue dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked more like someone preparing a presentation than someone managing a major division of a successful company. He stood and extended his hand. You must be Olivia? Yes. She shook his hand. Nice to meet you. Ethan. His smile was easy and genuine. I appreciate you coming aboard. Olivia sat across from him as he explained the projects they would be handling together. Scheduling, client communication, internal reports, meeting preparation. The work sounded demanding but manageable. What surprised her most was Ethan himself. He spoke to her as if she were already part of the team. No arrogance, no impatience, no superiority, just straightforward respect. After years of temporary jobs, that felt unusual. By late afternoon, Olivia was settling into a rhythm. She organized files, updated schedules, and responded to emails. Several employees stopped by her desk throughout the day. Some needed help locating documents. Others had questions about upcoming meetings. Olivia helped each person as best she could. Shortly before 5 o'clock, she noticed a young intern struggling with a printer that seemed determined not to cooperate. Most people walked past without stopping. Olivia spent 10 minutes helping him solve the problem. The relief on his face made her smile. What she did not notice was Ethan watching from across the office floor. He returned to his office without saying a word. Later, as employees packed up for the evening, Olivia gathered her belongings and prepared to leave. The first day had gone better than expected. As she passed Ethan's office, she noticed him still working. Papers covered his desk. A half-finished report remained open on his computer screen. He looked up when she paused near the doorway. Long day, she asked. Ethan smiled. Getting there. Well, good luck. Thank you. Olivia headed toward the elevators, unaware that Ethan continued watching the closing doors for several seconds after she disappeared. Around him, the office slowly emptied. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. The message came from a member of the executive board. A simple question. First impression? Ethan looked toward the empty hallway where Olivia had walked only moments earlier. A faint smile crossed his face before he typed a response. Better than expected. By the end of her first week, Olivia Harper had memorized most of the office routines, learned the names of nearly everyone on her floor, and discovered that Walker Solutions operated differently from any company she had worked for before. People actually spoke to one another. Managers listened. Problems were addressed instead of ignored. It was not perfect, but it felt surprisingly human. What puzzled her most, however, was Ethan Walker. Every morning, he arrived carrying the same worn leather messenger bag. Every afternoon, he checked in with employees from every department, whether they were senior analysts or entry-level assistants. And somehow, despite his title, he always seemed more interested in people than numbers. On Monday morning, Olivia arrived 20 minutes early and found Ethan already sitting in a conference room reviewing documents. A large coffee sat beside him. Several pages were spread across the table. He looked up as she entered. "Good morning. You know it is not even 8 o'clock yet, right?" Olivia asked. Ethan smiled. "That explains why nobody else is here." She laughed and took her seat. Throughout the morning, they worked through schedules, vendor contracts, and project timelines. The workload was heavier than she expected, but she enjoyed the challenge. Every completed task felt like proof that she could still move forward despite everything happening outside the office. Around noon, her phone vibrated quietly. She glanced at the screen and immediately felt her stomach tighten. It was a message from the hospital, a reminder about her father's upcoming treatment appointment. Along with the reminder came another estimate of expected costs. Olivia quickly locked the screen before anyone could notice. She forced herself to focus on work. One task at a time, one day at a time. That had become her survival strategy. Ethan noticed the change in her expression, but said nothing. Later that afternoon, a client meeting ran longer than expected. Several employees remained behind after normal hours preparing reports. Olivia stayed as well. Near 6 o'clock, she carried a stack of documents toward Ethan's office and noticed a member of the cleaning staff struggling with a supply cart near the hallway entrance. Without hesitation, she set the documents down and helped move several heavy boxes onto a nearby shelf. The older employee smiled gratefully. "Thank you." "Of course," Olivia replied. 10 minutes later, she finally delivered the documents to Ethan. "Sorry for the delay." "No problem." He glanced toward the hallway where the cleaning employee was finishing her work. "You seem to help everyone." Olivia shrugged. "Most people just need a little help sometimes." Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "Not everyone sees it that way. Maybe they are too busy." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan smiled and returned to the reports. The conversation was brief, yet something about it stayed with him long after she left the room. The next morning brought a new challenge. A scheduling conflict threatened to disrupt an important presentation involving multiple departments. Several managers argued over available conference rooms, while deadlines grew closer by the minute. Olivia listened quietly, then suggested a simple solution involving an unused meeting space on another floor. Within 15 minutes, the issue was resolved. One manager actually applauded. Another joked that they should promote her immediately. Olivia laughed and returned to work. Across the office, Ethan watched the entire exchange. What impressed him was not the solution itself. It was the fact that Olivia never tried to take credit afterward. She simply moved on to the next task. Late Friday afternoon, as employees prepared for the weekend, Olivia stopped by Ethan's office to drop off several completed reports. The office was empty. His chair sat pushed back from the desk. A notebook rested beside an open folder. It looked old and heavily used. The edges were worn. The cover showed years of handling. Olivia placed the reports down and turned to leave. Then she noticed Ethan entering from the hallway carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Perfect timing," he said. "I was about to look for you." He handed her one of the cups. "Thank you. You earned it this week." Olivia smiled. They sat for a few minutes discussing upcoming projects. As she prepared to leave, Ethan accidentally knocked the old notebook from the edge of his desk. It landed on the floor with a soft thud. He picked it up immediately, but not before Olivia noticed how carefully he handled it. Almost protectively. "Important?" she asked. Ethan glanced down at the notebook and smiled faintly. More than most people would guess. Olivia wondered what could possibly make an old notebook so valuable. She had no idea that the answer would change both of their lives before the temporary job was over. The following Tuesday began like any other. Chicago's morning traffic crawled beneath gray skies. Coffee machines hummed throughout the office, and employees moved from meeting to meeting carrying laptops and deadlines. Olivia arrived early as usual, balancing a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a stack of reports in the other. Over the past 2 weeks, she had settled comfortably into her role. She knew which executives preferred email over phone calls. She knew which conference rooms had unreliable projectors. She even knew which vending machine occasionally gave out 2 snacks instead of 1. The job still felt temporary, but for the first time in months, she had stopped checking employment websites every evening. There was something reassuring about having a place to be every morning. Around 11 o'clock, Ethan left for a series of meetings on different floors. Before leaving, he handed Olivia a list of tasks and thanked her for organizing a complicated client schedule the previous day. The compliment was simple, but it meant more than he probably realized. Many supervisors noticed mistakes. Few noticed effort. The morning passed quickly. By early afternoon, Olivia carried several signed documents into Ethan's office to place them on his desk. The room was empty. Sunlight filtered through the windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Everything appeared exactly as he had left it earlier except for one detail. The old notebook was missing from its usual spot. Olivia set the documents down and turned toward the door. Then something caught her eye. The notebook lay partially hidden beneath a chair near the corner of the room. Apparently, it had slipped from a stack of folders. She walked over and picked it up. The worn leather cover felt smooth from years of use. The edges were faded. A small elastic band wrapped around it to keep the pages closed. For a moment, she simply held it. There was something strangely personal about the object. In a world filled with digital calendars and cloud storage, Ethan still carried this notebook everywhere. She remembered the way he had immediately picked it up when it fell the previous week, almost like someone protecting a family photograph. Olivia had no intention of opening it. Instead, she carefully placed it on his desk where he would see it immediately upon returning. Then she went back to work. Nearly an hour later, Ethan stepped into the office. Olivia was reviewing invoices nearby when she heard a drawer open, then close. A few seconds later, Ethan appeared beside her desk. "Have you been in my office today?" he asked. Olivia looked up. "Just to drop off contracts." Relief flashed briefly across his face. "Did you happen to see a notebook?" "The old brown one." Ethan nodded. "It was on the floor. I put it back on your desk." For a second, he simply stood there. Then he smiled. Not the polite professional smile she saw every day. Something warmer. More genuine. "Thank you." "You are welcome." Ethan glanced toward his office. Most people would not have noticed. Olivia laughed softly. It was sitting in the middle of the floor. Still, he paused. "Thank you." Later that evening, most employees had already left when Olivia finished organizing documents for the next day's meetings. As she packed her bag, she noticed Ethan standing by the office windows looking out across the city. Lights were beginning to appear between the skyscrapers. Traffic stretched for miles below. "Long day?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "Something like that." He hesitated before holding up the notebook. "You were curious about this, were not you?" Olivia laughed. "A little." "Fair answer." He looked down at the worn cover. "I started keeping this years ago." "What is inside?" "Ideas. Mistakes. Lessons." His smile widened slightly. "Mostly mistakes." Olivia stepped closer. "That many. More than I care to admit." For a moment his expression turned thoughtful. "Every major decision I ever made is in here somewhere." Olivia looked at the notebook differently after that. It was not valuable because of money. It was valuable because it contained pieces of a person's journey. "Then you should definitely not lose it," she said. Ethan laughed. "Agreed." Neither realized it then, but the notebook resting in his hands would eventually become the most important object in both of their lives. And somewhere deep inside its pages, a blank space still waited for a story that had not been written yet. Over the next several weeks, Olivia became the person everyone seemed to seek out when something went wrong. A meeting changed at the last minute. Someone called Olivia. A client needed information quickly. Someone called Olivia. An intern was overwhelmed during his first major assignment. Someone called Olivia. What surprised her most was that none of those requests came with any promise of promotion or reward. She simply could not bring herself to ignore people who needed help. One rainy Thursday afternoon, she noticed a young receptionist struggling to manage a lobby full of visitors while answering a constantly ringing phone. Without being asked, Olivia stepped behind the desk and helped organize check-ins for nearly 20 minutes until the rush subsided. The receptionist looked ready to cry from relief. "Thank you," she said. "I thought I was going to lose my mind." Olivia laughed. "Trust me, we have all had those days." Later that same afternoon, She carried files to another department and found a maintenance employee attempting to move several large supply boxes. Once again, she stopped to help. It cost her a few extra minutes. Nothing more. To Olivia, kindness had never felt like a decision. It was simply a habit. What she did not realize was that someone was paying attention. From a glass conference room overlooking the main office floor, Ethan watched many of those moments unfold. Not because he was looking for them, because they kept happening. Every time he observed Olivia, she seemed to treat people exactly the same regardless of their position. She spoke to executives with respect. She spoke to interns with the same respect. She thanked security guards by name. She remembered birthdays. She brought coffee to a co-worker recovering from the flu. None of it felt performative. None of it felt calculated. One evening after most employees had left, Ethan sat alone in a conference room reviewing quarterly reports when his phone buzzed. The call came from Richard Monroe, a senior board member. "How is your assistant working out?" Richard asked. Ethan glanced through the glass wall toward Olivia's desk, where she was still finishing paperwork. "Very well. That is not what I asked." Ethan smiled faintly. Richard had known him too long to accept simple answers. "What are you asking?" Ethan replied. "I am asking whether she is who you think she is." Ethan looked at Olivia again. She was helping another employee understand a spreadsheet despite the fact that she could have gone home 30 minutes earlier. "I do not know yet," Ethan said honestly. Richard laughed softly. "You sound interested." Ethan ended the conversation without answering. The following week brought one of the company's largest client presentations of the year. Departments worked around the clock preparing materials. Stress levels climbed higher each day. During a planning meeting, several managers disagreed over scheduling priorities. Voices became tense. Deadlines seemed impossible. Olivia listened quietly before offering a simple solution that allowed every department to keep their timelines intact. The room immediately relaxed. One manager actually pointed at her and said, "I do not know how we survived before she got here." Everyone laughed. Olivia did too. Ethan noticed she looked genuinely embarrassed by the attention. Later that evening, as the office emptied once again, Olivia stopped by Ethan's office carrying the final presentation schedule. She placed the folder on his desk. "Everything is ready for tomorrow." Ethan looked up from his computer. "You stayed late again." "So did you." "That is different." Olivia folded her arms. "Why?" Ethan considered the question. Then he smiled. "Fair point." For a moment, neither spoke. Rain tapped softly against the office windows. Downtown Chicago shimmered beneath thousands of city lights. Finally, Olivia noticed the familiar notebook resting beside Ethan's keyboard. "You still carry that thing everywhere." Ethan looked down at it. "Every day. You must be afraid of losing it." "Very." Olivia smiled. "Then maybe you should keep it somewhere safer." Ethan's expression softened. "Some things are more valuable because you carry them with you." The words lingered in the air longer than either expected. Olivia looked away first. Neither of them realized that their lives were already moving toward a moment that would change everything. Somewhere beyond the walls of the office, a secret remained hidden. And with every passing day, the cost of keeping that secret was becoming greater than Ethan had ever anticipated. On the surface, nothing changed. Olivia continued arriving early, organizing schedules, solving problems, and helping anyone who needed assistance. Ethan continued acting like a hard-working operations manager whose responsibilities seemed unusually broad for his title. Yet behind the scenes, an entirely different story was unfolding. 2 floors above the office where Olivia worked every day, a private conference room overlooked the Chicago skyline. Late one evening, several members of Walker Solutions' executive leadership team gathered around a polished table. Financial reports covered the screens. Expansion plans filled the agenda. At the head of the room sat Ethan, not as an operations manager, not as a department supervisor, as the founder and majority owner of the entire company. "The Denver acquisition is ready for final approval," one executive said. "We are waiting on your decision." Ethan reviewed the numbers calmly. Around the table, experienced executives listened carefully to every word he spoke. Decisions affecting thousands of employees and millions of dollars moved forward based on his judgment. When the meeting finally ended, Richard Monroe remained behind. "You cannot keep this hidden forever," Richard said. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "I know. The annual leadership summit is next month." Richard folded his arms. "Every employee will be there." Ethan glanced toward the city lights outside. I know that too. Richard studied him carefully. Then what exactly are you waiting for? For several seconds, Ethan said nothing. Finally, he smiled faintly. Maybe I am hoping there is a perfect time. Richard laughed. There is never a perfect time. Downstairs, completely unaware of that conversation, Olivia was finishing expense reports before heading home. Her father had another treatment appointment scheduled for the following morning. The latest insurance statement sat folded inside her purse. Every time she looked at the numbers, her chest tightened. She was grateful for the temporary position, but she knew the contract would eventually end. The uncertainty never fully disappeared. The next week brought preparations for the company's largest annual event. Employees from multiple offices would gather for presentations, awards, and strategic planning sessions. Excitement spread throughout the building. Olivia spent much of her time coordinating schedules and travel arrangements. One afternoon, while organizing conference materials, she overheard two senior managers discussing the company's founder. Do you think he will actually attend this year? One asked. He never misses it, the other replied. The founder built this company from nothing. People practically treat him like a legend. Olivia smiled to herself. She had heard similar stories from several employees. Apparently, the founder was brilliant, private, and rarely seen around the office. The mystery amused her. Later that day, she walked into Ethan's office carrying finalized schedules. He was reviewing documents beside the familiar notebook. Everyone keeps talking about the founder, Olivia said. Ethan looked up. Do they? Apparently, he is some kind of business superhero. Ethan laughed. That sounds exaggerated. That is what I thought. Olivia sat across from him. Have you met him? For the briefest moment, Ethan nearly smiled. A few times. And Ethan considered his answer carefully. He is not as impressive as people think. Olivia laughed. That is probably true for most famous people. Ethan looked down at the notebook resting beside his hand. For reasons he could not fully explain, the conversation left him uneasy. Every day that passed made the truth more difficult to reveal. Not because he feared losing respect, because he feared losing Olivia's trust. That evening, after most employees had gone home, Ethan remained alone in his office. He opened the worn notebook and turned through pages filled with years of observations, ideas, failures, and victories. Near the back, he stopped at a recently written entry. A single sentence occupied the page. Some people remain kind even when nobody is watching. Ethan stared at the words for several moments. Then he closed the notebook. Across town, Olivia sat beside her father in a hospital waiting room, talking about ordinary things while trying not to think about medical bills. Neither of them knew that within a few short weeks, the carefully hidden truth about Ethan Walker would step into the spotlight. And when it did, nothing in either of their lives would remain the same. The annual leadership summit arrived on a bright autumn morning. Employees from offices across the country filled a downtown Chicago convention center buzzing with excitement. Large screens displayed company achievements, future projects, and messages celebrating another successful year. Olivia arrived early carrying schedules, presentation notes, and enough emergency supplies to handle any last-minute crisis. The event represented weeks of preparation, and she wanted everything to run smoothly. Around her, hundreds of employees took their seats while executives moved between backstage areas making final adjustments. Despite the energy filling the building, Olivia noticed one unusual detail. Ethan seemed distracted. He was calm as always, but there was a seriousness in his expression she had never seen before. Big day? She asked while handing him an updated agenda. Ethan accepted the document and smiled faintly. Something like that. You look nervous. Do I? A little. Ethan laughed softly. Then I should probably work on hiding it better. Olivia smiled. Whatever happens today, everything is organized. Trust me. For a moment, he looked at her as though he wanted to say something more. Instead, he simply nodded. I do trust you. The opening presentations began shortly afterward. Department leaders discussed performance results. New initiatives were announced. Employees applauded impressive milestones. Olivia spent most of the morning moving between coordination stations, making sure speakers arrived on time and schedules remained on track. Everything seemed perfect. Then the final session approached. The room lights dimmed slightly as a senior executive stepped onto the stage. Before we conclude today's summit, he announced, We would like to recognize the individual whose vision built this company from a single rented office into one of the most respected organizations in the country. Applause immediately filled the convention center. Olivia smiled. Finally, she would get to see the mysterious founder everyone talked about. The executive continued. Many of you know his work. Many of you know his story. But few people truly know the man himself. A large screen illuminated behind the stage. Images appeared showing the company's earliest years. Old photographs, newspaper articles, historic milestones. The audience watched attentively. Olivia glanced around the room. She suddenly realized Ethan was nowhere near his seat. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Then the executive smiled and spoke the words that changed everything. Please join me in welcoming the founder, Chief Executive Officer, and majority owner of Walker Solutions, Ethan Walker. The entire room rose to its feet. Applause exploded across the convention center. Olivia felt her heartbeat stop. No, that was impossible. Then a side door opened. Ethan walked onto the stage. Not as an operations manager. Not as her supervisor. As the man who owned the company. As the leader every employee admired. As a millionaire entrepreneur whose success had become industry legend. The standing ovation continued for nearly a full minute. Olivia remained frozen in her seat. Every conversation they had shared replayed through her mind. Every late evening. Every meeting. Every moment. Suddenly they looked completely different. Ethan stepped to the microphone and waited for the applause to settle. His eyes moved across the audience. Then, for the briefest second, they found hers. Thank you, he began. Years ago, I started this company with one goal. To build a place where people mattered more than titles. The audience listened attentively. Olivia barely heard the words. Her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. He had never been a manager. He had never been an ordinary employee. He had been the founder all along. Every executive who treated him with extraordinary respect suddenly made sense. Every mysterious meeting. Every unexplained decision. Every detail she had overlooked. The speech continued, but Olivia could focus only on one question. Why had he hidden it? When the presentation finally ended, employees surged forward hoping to congratulate the founder. Olivia remained seated. Her emotions collided in a confusing storm of shock, disbelief, admiration, and hurt. She had trusted him. She thought she knew him. Now she was no longer sure what had been real. Across the crowded room, Ethan stepped down from the stage. Dozens of people surrounded him immediately. Yet despite the attention, despite the applause, despite the celebration, his eyes searched for only one person. And when he finally saw Olivia standing near the back of the convention center, staring at him with a look he had dreaded for weeks, he realized the moment he feared had finally arrived. The crowd around Ethan seemed endless. Executives shook his hand. Employees congratulated him. Photographers captured the moment. Yet none of it mattered. The only thing he could see was Olivia walking toward the exit. By the time he finally worked his way through the convention center, she was already outside. Autumn wind swept through the city streets as she stood near the curb waiting for a rideshare. Ethan approached carefully. Olivia. She turned. The disappointment in her eyes hit harder than any criticism ever could. For several seconds, neither spoke. The sounds of downtown Chicago filled the silence between them. Finally, Ethan took a breath. I know what this looks like. Olivia laughed softly. Do you? Yes. Then explain it to me. Ethan searched for the right words. I never wanted to deceive you. Olivia stared at him. You let me spend months believing you were a middle manager. I know. You let me tell you things I would never have shared if I knew who you really were. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. I know. Then why? The question hung between them. Ethan had rehearsed answers for weeks. None of them seemed adequate now. Because I wanted people to treat me normally. Olivia shook her head. People. Her voice softened. Or me. Ethan did not answer immediately. That silence told her everything. For the first time, Olivia understood the truth. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about company culture or observation. It had become personal. That realization should have comforted her. Instead, it hurt even more. I trusted you, she said quietly. I know. Every conversation feels different now. The conversations were real. Were they? Olivia asked. Because right now I do not know what was real and what was not. Ethan stepped forward. Everything between us was real. Except your identity. The words landed with painful accuracy. Ethan had no defense against them. Olivia looked away toward the busy street. For months she had admired Ethan because he seemed grounded, honest, different from people obsessed with status. Now she felt foolish. Not because he was wealthy, because he had hidden such an enormous truth. Her rideshare notification appeared on her phone. She glanced down at the screen, then back at Ethan. "I think I need some time." Ethan nodded slowly. He had expected that answer. It still hurt. "How much time?" Olivia gave a sad smile. "If I knew that, this would be easier." The car arrived moments later. Before getting in, she paused. "You know what bothers me most?" Ethan waited. "I liked who I thought you were." Then she closed the door and disappeared into traffic. The following Monday felt completely different. The office buzzed with excitement after the summit. Employees discussed the founder's speech. Social media posts circulated. Internal newsletters celebrated the event's success. Olivia sat quietly at her desk, trying to focus on work. Everywhere she looked, reminders of Ethan appeared. Framed photographs, company announcements, leadership profiles. It felt as though she had been working inside a different reality the entire time. Around noon, she opened her laptop and typed a short letter. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote. When she finished, she stared at the screen for nearly 10 minutes before printing the page. Later that afternoon, she knocked on Ethan's office door. He looked up immediately. Hope flickered across his face. Then he saw the envelope in her hand. The hope disappeared. Olivia stepped inside and placed the letter on his desk. Ethan already knew what it was. "You are resigning." It was not a question. Olivia nodded. "My contract still has several weeks left, but I think it is better this way." Ethan looked down at the envelope. "Because of me. Because I do not know how to work for someone I no longer understand." The honesty in her voice made the moment even harder. Ethan stood slowly. "Olivia, please. I am not angry anymore." She offered a small, tired smile. "That might actually be worse." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. For the first time since building the company, he faced a loss he could not negotiate, solve, or overcome through effort alone. Olivia moved toward the door. Before leaving, she glanced back one final time. Her eyes briefly landed on the worn notebook resting beside his computer. Then she looked at him. "I hope you find what you were looking for." Ethan watched her leave. The office door closed softly behind her. For several minutes, he remained motionless. Then he opened the notebook and stared at a blank page. After a long silence, he wrote a single sentence. "The hardest truth to earn back is trust once it has been freely given." The weeks after Olivia submitted her resignation felt strangely quiet. She continued fulfilling the remainder of her contract with the same professionalism she had shown from the beginning, but the easy conversations between her and Ethan disappeared. They spoke when necessary. They discussed schedules, reports, and deadlines. Nothing more. The distance was polite, respectful, and painful for both of them. Ethan honored her decision. He did not ask her to stay. He did not use his position to change her mind. Every instinct told him to fight for her trust. Yet he understood that trust rebuilt through pressure was not trust at all. Meanwhile, Olivia focused on what mattered most. Her father. Medical appointments continued. Insurance paperwork continued. Financial uncertainty continued. Some days, she wondered whether leaving the company was the right decision. Then she remembered standing in that convention center, realizing how much had been hidden from her, and the doubt returned. One cold November afternoon, Olivia accompanied her father to another hospital appointment. The visit lasted longer than expected. By the time they reached the reception desk, a scheduling issue had delayed approval for part of an upcoming treatment plan. The receptionist apologized repeatedly while searching through records. Olivia remained calm, but inside she felt exhausted. It seemed like every step forward came with two new obstacles. Finally, the issue was resolved, and they headed home. A few days later, another surprise arrived. A community medical assistance program approved additional support for several treatment expenses that had previously fallen outside insurance coverage. Olivia stared at the letter in disbelief. "How did this happen?" her father asked. She shook her head. "I honestly do not know." More unexpected developments followed. A local education foundation offered a grant covering professional certification courses Olivia had once dreamed of completing. A neighborhood family assistance organization helped connect her father with specialized resources that significantly improved his care options. Each opportunity arrived through established programs. No special treatment. No personal messages. No indication that anyone had intervened on her behalf. Yet the timing felt impossible to ignore. One evening, several weeks later, Olivia attended a community fundraiser hosted inside a renovated learning center on the south side of Chicago. She had volunteered to help coordinate guest registration. As the event progressed, she noticed a display near the entrance highlighting major donors who had funded educational and healthcare initiatives throughout the city. Her eyes moved casually across the names until one stopped her cold. Walker Foundation. She stared at it for several seconds. Nearby, a program brochure described dozens of grants supporting families facing medical and financial hardship. The same programs that had recently helped her father. A strange feeling settled in her chest. After the event ended, curiosity refused to let go. Over the next few days, Olivia researched the foundation. Public records revealed years of charitable work, scholarships, healthcare assistance, community development projects. None of the materials focused on publicity. Most recipients probably never knew who funded the programs. Slowly, a realization emerged. Ethan had helped. Not directly, not personally, not in a way that demanded gratitude or attention. He had simply made sure resources existed for people who needed them, including her family. Yet he never mentioned it once. He never called, never sent a message, never used any of it as a reason she should forgive him. That realization stayed with her for days. Then one Saturday morning, while delivering documents for a volunteer organization, she found herself standing outside a new community education center funded through the Walker Foundation. Through the front windows, she saw someone reviewing plans with several staff members. Ethan. He looked up unexpectedly. Surprise crossed his face. The staff members politely excused themselves, leaving the two of them alone. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Olivia stepped closer. "You never told me." Ethan understood immediately. There was nothing to tell. The programs, the grants, the help. Ethan folded his hands. "Those programs existed long before you and I met. But you knew my family qualified." He nodded. "Yes." Olivia searched his face. "Why did you not say anything?" Ethan smiled sadly. "Because if I had, it would have looked like I was trying to buy forgiveness." The answer hit her harder than she expected. Because it was true. For the first time since the convention center reveal, Olivia saw no founder, no millionaire, no title. She saw the same man who stayed late helping employees, carried an old notebook everywhere, and quietly tried to improve lives without demanding recognition. And for the first time in months, the wall between them began to crack. Spring arrived in Chicago with clear skies, flowering trees, and the feeling that long winters eventually end, no matter how impossible they seem while you are living through them. Nearly a year had passed since Olivia Harper first walked through the doors of Walker Solutions carrying a folder of paperwork and more worries than she could count. Life looked very different now. Her father's health had improved steadily. The certification program she once thought was out of reach was nearly complete. Most importantly, the trust she and Ethan had struggled to rebuild had finally returned. Not all at once. Not through grand speeches. Through consistency. Through honesty. Through showing up day after day exactly as they claimed they would. After their conversation at the community center, they slowly found their way back into each other's lives. They shared coffee before work. Long walks after busy days. Quiet dinners where nobody talked about business at all. For the first time, there were no hidden identities and no unanswered questions between them. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan invited Olivia to attend the opening of a new educational foundation facility on the north side of the city. The building would provide scholarships, career training, and support services for families facing financial hardship. Hundreds of people attended the event. Volunteers guided guests through bright classrooms and modern learning spaces. Olivia spent much of the afternoon speaking with students whose lives would benefit from the programs. Watching their excitement reminded her why she had always believed kindness mattered even when nobody seemed to notice. As the event drew to a close, Ethan approached her with a familiar smile. "There is one more thing I want to show you." Olivia followed him through a quiet hallway away from the crowd. They entered a small room overlooking the center's main courtyard. Sunlight streamed through large windows. At first, the room appeared empty except for a single display mounted on the wall. Then Olivia stepped closer and stopped. Inside a glass frame rested the old notebook. Ethan's notebook. The same worn leather notebook he had carried everywhere since the day they met. The notebook she once picked up from the floor of his office. The notebook that had somehow become part of their story. Beside it hung a small plaque. Olivia read the inscription slowly. Every success begins with people who choose kindness when no one is keeping score. Her eyes immediately filled with emotion. Ethan. He stepped beside her. Do you remember asking why I carried it everywhere? Olivia smiled softly. You told me it contained your mistakes. That part was true. He looked at the notebook. It also contains every lesson that mattered. Olivia turned toward him. And what lesson mattered most? Ethan laughed quietly. That titles impress people. Character changes lives. For a moment, neither spoke. The afternoon sunlight illuminated the notebook behind the glass. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket. Olivia immediately noticed the nervous expression she had only seen a few times before. It made her smile. You are nervous. Very. Good. Ethan laughed. That is not helping. Olivia folded her arms playfully. Proceed. He took a slow breath and removed a small ring box. Suddenly the room felt very still. Ethan looked at her with the same sincerity she had first noticed long before she knew who he really was. The day you started working for me was supposed to last 3 months. Olivia felt tears forming before he even continued. Ethan opened the box. Somewhere along the way, I realized I was hoping you would stay much longer than that. His voice softened. Not because of the company. Not because of the job. Because of you. Olivia laughed through tears. Ethan reached into the glass display case beside the framed notebook and carefully removed a folded page preserved between protective sheets. She recognized it instantly. A note she had written during her first weeks as his assistant while organizing project plans. Across the bottom, she had scribbled a simple reminder. Keep showing up. Ethan handed it to her. You changed my life with that advice, whether you realized it or not. Then he looked directly into her eyes. Olivia Harper, will you marry me? The answer came before he even finished asking. Yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger as sunlight filled the room. Months later, surrounded by family, friends, co-workers, and students whose lives had been touched by the foundation, they celebrated a joyful wedding beneath a clear summer sky. And among all the photographs taken that day, one remained their favorite. Not the wedding portrait, not the celebration. A simple picture of an old notebook resting open to its final page. The last entry contained only one sentence. She was hired for 3 months. I spent the rest of my life hoping she would stay.